Hello and welcome. My name is Carol Carter. I'm here with Lisa Wyckoff from Global Minded, and we're delighted that you could join us this morning for this session, Creating Engaging Learning Experiences Using Free and Low-Cost Digital Resources. If you're not familiar with Global Minded, we create a capable, diverse talent pipeline to get more women, people of color, first gen to college, and other underrepresented populations into the education, employment, economic mobility, and leadership pipeline. So we do that in a number of ways, and one of the biggest ways is an annual conference, which is really this year gone virtual over about 11 weeks. And it's still gonna just keep going all year at this rate that we're going. So we're glad you could join us. We hope that we see you all next June. And we also are recording all of these sessions. And if you want to share them with your colleagues or other associates who weren't able to be live with us, they're on the Global Minded 2020 YouTube channel. And we'll be posting the link to this session in tomorrow's newsletter. And if you want the newsletter and you're not on that list, go ahead and put your email in the chat and we'll make sure that we can get you signed up for that. So it's my pleasure now to introduce the team that's here with you today. We've got Terry Roanhorst, who's the Director of Member Engagement, and Dr. Angie Samasura, who's the Regional Membership Manager, and Dr. Arash Bissell, who's the President of NROC. NROC has been a longtime partner, I think, since the beginning of Global Minded, and we've done a lot of wonderful work with their members and their first-gen students and several of their incredible faculty who they work with. So I'll pass it over to them and they can share more about their organization and the incredible resources that they provide and how valuable it is at a time like this. So thanks for joining. Welcome.
Thank you, Carol. We are so pleased to be talking a little bit about the open educational resources that we provide today. I had the privilege of sitting in on yesterday's session with Nadine Klein, and she was sharing about the challenges as a teacher in finding robust resources to create engaging lesson plans that will work in whatever environment you find yourself in. And we know that that's a kind of a moving target these days. So we are looking forward to sharing a little bit of our work with you today. We're going to be playing with the tool Menticom. So if you have a cell phone with you, or if you want to open in a separate tab, this www.menti.com, and use this code that you see at the top of this page, we've got some integrated questions just for fun, just to introduce this tool if you're not familiar with tools like this. There are a number of applications available, freely available for you to use to engage students in some of the lessons that you're creating. So we just thought this would be a chance to play with one. So if you are at that site, we'd love for you just to type in, you can type in several things, but what do you think makes a lesson engaging for learners? Angie promised to play along if no one else.
I'm working.
It's a typing thing. Relevance, that's exactly the word that always comes to my mind first, right? So relevance to their study path, relevance to their ambitions, where they are in school. Yesterday when Nadine was talking with some students that were participating on her end, some of them were talking about how they wish there were more videos of they really enjoyed seeing their instructor on video, how video was used was important to them, the different modes of engagement. So thank you, colorful, interactive, that's great, nice. Thank you for sharing those. We'll be reflecting on this at the end of this session to see what you think about how the NROC resources might be suitable. So this is just creating a little word cloud for us, and this will be available with the archive that we'll share with you as well. Thank you all for playing along. So we are going to be mostly talking about free online resources. This is just a question about it as you've transitioned your courses online earlier in the spring and as you look to the fall. If you could just, it's measuring how important these various resources have been in your converting to your classes for the requirements of these days. So if you've used online textbooks or videos that you found online, if you use an LMS, personalized learning platforms is really what our EdReady tool is. We're going to be talking about that, and I'm sure that it looks like some of you are using others. And there's a lot of widgets like Mentimeter to help you create applications. So that's what that lesson creation application is about. Great. So nice. Thank you guys for playing along. Yeah, and I know there are a lot of other resources as well, but I think there hasn't been a budget for this conversion we've been asked to make to move everything online. So it's been really important to be able to find some free resources to support those efforts. So thank you all for playing with that. Yeah, the learning management system has definitely come of age in this time. Mm-hmm. So our project, as Carol says, we are a group of educators. We represent secondary, post-secondary, and adult educators. And we have a member community that helps us build resources. And I'm going to ask Arash to share a little bit more about our mission and our place in the OER world from here.
Sure. Thanks, Terry. So as Terry said, we're a nonprofit organization, and we've been going strong for over 15 years now. And we were one of the original open educational resource focused projects that emerged when that concept really started to take root and saw some significant funding from major foundations like the Hewlett Foundation and later others. And so we've been kind of navigating this journey of what exactly is open educational resources. How do you make them? How do you sustain them? What does it do in terms of improving student access, success, giving teachers and instructors more tools, et cetera? And where we've sort of landed and have now been running with for quite some time is this idea that at heart, the logic of open educational resources depends on collaboration. It depends on community. And so we say that we're a community guided project, and the resources we build and we develop depend on having relationships with institutions, with instructors, teachers, faculty, et cetera, who give us insight into what might be possible if, in fact, they had access to high quality digital learning resources that they could adapt and modify and make relevant to the particular situation they're in. And since we have the expertise in developing these resources and in then distributing them and sustaining them and improving them, we lean on our community to help tell us, well, what do they really need? And then we try to provide the basis for that. So in that world, and you can move on to the next, we've embraced this definition of OER. There are several definitions that are out there. For us, the key issue with OER is access, right? There's an obligation that we have that we don't want what we do to limit opportunity for especially people who might not otherwise have access through more privileged circumstances, whether that's because of where they live or their particular background. That said, it is impossible to sustain an organization if you don't have any revenue model at all. And so we've had to sort of think creatively about how do we navigate and sort of build a structure that allows us to continue to build, push out, and support the utilization of open educational resources, but also brings some kind of revenue back so we can do this over the long haul. And so we've ended up with this approach that's really kind of a spectrum. And you can think of it as being kind of, all the way from here, this stuff's out there, absolutely everybody can use it, and they can use it for pretty much any purpose. And that includes a lot of our text-based resources, which as open educational resources are relatively easy to modify and adapt. And so we've seen a lot of, let's just call them adaptations of our original, high quality textbook and text-based materials into other forms. And in fact, if you trace the origin of an awful lot of material from other organizations out there, you'll find quite a bit of it points back to our original material, especially in math. We also, through sites like Hippocampus, which you'll hear a lot more about, offer the opportunity for any individual anywhere in the world to come in and take full advantage of our materials. No restrictions whatsoever. We then recognize that there's a difference between meeting individual needs versus meeting the needs of institutions, right? Where there are rules and obligations and so on that accrue, many of which require privacy considerations to be maintained. They need access to certain data so they can manage student learning experiences. There are probably security considerations, et cetera. These are additional costs that go beyond just giving people great stuff to learn from. And so we ask institutions to contribute, right, to become part of our membership and to help pay and underwrite the cost of doing that. And you'll see some of that contrast as we move forward. You can move on to the next slide. And so what makes us different is, you know, as a nonprofit mission-focused project, we really focus, again, on these academic partnerships. We try to build the capacity and the capability of our community to do creative things, to implement best practice, and to feed back to us where there's opportunity for improvement. And then we try to figure out how can we underwrite and act on those insights in a way that helps everybody. So individual members may have insights, but the results of, you know, acting on that then get spread broadly, and everybody benefits. The vast majority of the investment that was made in all of these tools and resources you're going to hear more about came from grant dollars. And that's a particular benefit we can bring where, you know, individual schools are really not in a position typically to pull in significant development grants. We're in a better position to do that on behalf of everybody. And so we provide that service as well. And so we're going to walk through sort of the variation across our offerings from content to tools, and I'm going to hand it off to Terry to start stepping you through what's on offer.
Thanks, Arash. So as he mentioned, the initial projects that we created were actually with the grant funding, with significant grant funding, was creating full-on curriculum for core level math, 8th grade algebra, and then developmental math and developmental English, which is really all of the math and English students moving from high school to college need to have in order to be successful in credit-bearing courses in college. So that's where we began, and folks asked sort of, you know, well, what's the secret sauce of these tools and these applications that you have? And we often come back to this curriculum, this robust curriculum that we developed. Before folks got on, Carol and I were talking a little bit about some of the challenges with the OER to put together, you know, to not come up with just a total Frankenstein in your course, right? For the instruction to be cohesive and consistent in terms of the pedagogical elements. And so the courses that we created for Algebra 1 and for developmental math include all of the elements you see at the bottom of this screen. So there are conceptual presentations, very short videos, which we know is what students need, or short videos, examples, worked examples that show procedures, lots of adaptive practice sets, in addition to simulations and the integrated open textbook that Arash mentioned. So those resources are the same for both that middle school algebra course and for our developmental math sequence, which runs the length of the curriculum all the way from basic arithmetic. So we have some of our members using these arithmetic modules with 5th graders, all the way up through a unit on statistics, geometry, and trigonometry, which are traditional pre-algebra and pre-college algebra topics. In English, on the English side, when we began working with our funding from the Gates Foundation, there was a lot of effort going into integrating reading and writing in colleges. This was the standard approach in high school. But our program was carefully developed to build on reading, writing, grammar, and vocabulary skills that students need to be successful in college. It really is what skills the students should master when they're in the 11th, 12th grade as they're preparing for college. So I just want to mention the full-on courses. That's how they were developed. And what we've done with them in the applications that we're going to be sharing today is to adapt them for other purposes. So what I'm first going to share with you is our Hippocampus tool, which was our first tool that we developed. This is the one that everyone in the world can access at hippocampus.org. It's grown year by year to include a number of collections from other providers. All of those NROC resources that we created are available at Hippocampus as individual learning objects or building blocks to lessons that you might like to create. And we also have we've curated some of the best resources from a number of other providers. And so I'll show you how you can access Hippocampus and make use of some of that application's tools. The beauty of Hippocampus, though, is that it goes beyond math and English to share resources across the curriculum. So if you want to bring in math applications from biology, you can do that here. Or if you're teaching a physics class and you want to share examples, but you want to do some math review, you can build on the math objects that we have there for additional reviews. So these are curricularly relevant, they are rigorous. One of the hardest things with OER is identifying resources that are appropriate for the level you need and for the standard that you're teaching. And Hippocampus, the application, shares some of that. So I'm going to, this is hippocampus.org. We're going to go to the home page here. And no one needs to have an account at Hippocampus to access it. But we encourage you to create an account at Hippocampus so you can take full advantage of the application, particularly creating playlists, which is a way of sort of organizing the resources that you find here in a way that makes sense for your students. If you want to create assignments or use them as presentation assets in your own lectures, that's a possibility here. So to create an account, you simply click on this login button and it will ask you for some basic information. And then you'll have your own Hippocampus URL that you can share with your students. You can choose not to show all the subjects or all the collections if you want to keep it to what's relevant for your students. But I'm going to log into mine so you can see what else you can do. And again, keep your questions coming. Angie's monitoring that in the background there. So this is my site. I put this little logo up here. I was able to do that with my own site. I'm going to go into our arithmetic area. And you'll see, actually, I'm going to go back just 1 second. So over to the right here, you can see all of the collections that are available. That you can scroll in here and see all of the wonderful partners that have contributed to this site. And those collections are also designated in the left nav area here. So you can see all of our partners who have contributed to this arithmetic area, for instance. I am going to show you a piece of the NROC content so you can get a feel for that. We're going to take a look at our fractions presentation.
Three-fourths of the surface of our planet is water. 1/2 of all Americans have some college education. Both of these statements contain a fraction. A fraction is an expression used to refer to part of a whole. Fractions can represent part of a single thing or part of a group called a set of things. You encounter fractions every day of your life. You often see them in stores when they advertise half-off sales, or you see them when making a purchase that requires you to put 1/3 of the money down.
So all of these conceptual presentations really bring the applications home for students, why they should be learning it. So there are a number of really wonderful resources. This video is just 2 minutes long. Most of the videos at this site are around 1 to 3 minutes, less than 5 for sure. The goal being to bite-sized chunks that you could compile together into meaningful lessons for your students. I mentioned that you can create playlists if you have your own account. You can see that I've created some here. And it's really easy. So let's say you're going to do a lesson on fractions and you want to look across all of the collections we have. You can click this little box to select all of these collections, and you can type in the word fractions. So if you're preparing a lesson, this would be a way that you could find all of the materials that we have on fractions. And then if you see things that you like from these various collections, you could check them out. So this is an example from another course. This is from one of our partners. And if you like what you see, you simply grab that object and move it into your playlist. So it's that simple. And then if you're using this as a way of creating a sequence of activities for students to review, it will all show like this, or it can open in a separate window with a separate URL that you could embed in a lesson that you're planning. So you could create Hippocampus lessons to explain concepts to students and simply share this URL with them. So that's a real quick view at Hippocampus. So it's a collection of learning objects. We've got presentations, worked examples, simulations. Some of these are really powerful. Games. There's a lot of different kinds of tools here. So you could combine those in a way that makes sense for lessons for your learners. So I'm not sure if any of you have used Hippocampus before, but I'm curious if you take a moment with Mentimeter to tell us how you might use those. Oops, there was one other thing I wanted to share with you. So Hippocampus has all of this multimedia up above the fold, but if you drop below the fold, there's a little video here that will tell you how to make a playlist. So if you want a refresher on that, that's there. But you'll also see our open textbooks. So these are those textbooks that we created for the curriculum we have. They were really created to be viewed on screen, so it's a lot easier to read than a PDF. And it's our math content's available in both Spanish and English. And the open textbooks really are robust, like all of the core material that you would need in developmental math. That's a handbook for developmental English, and for Algebra 1 as well. So you can see there are built-in visuals, examples, quick self-checks. So these open textbooks are another special feature at Hippocampus below the fold that you can link to. You can link to the whole textbook, or you can link to any of those objects if you choose as you're creating lessons. So that is another powerful way to make use of Hippocampus. With that, I'm going to ask you to just chat in the Mentimeter question if you can think of some ways you might use Hippocampus in your classroom. Because this is our tradition at NROC. We ask our educator partners to share their ideas. No, it takes a minute, and you can submit several ideas if you'd like. What we've seen folks, when they have face-to-face opportunities in their classroom, using these tools with whiteboards. There's some activities that are really wonderful for demonstrating concepts. A lot of times students like to see their teachers on video, but hearing someone explain things in a different way can be helpful to them. And media is expensive to build, and it's difficult to find things that are really relevant for a course that you're teaching. So having this broken out by discipline, that's a great idea, making your older text-based lessons more robust. Yeah, the open textbooks are really awesome. I think a lot of people aren't aware of those because students have different ways of approaching materials. If some of you are adult educators out there, some adult educators don't like to watch the videos. They'd rather read the text. So this was just to get you thinking about how you might use it. So with that, we're gonna continue on to our other web-based tool. So Hippocampus was a way of breaking the content down to the smallest possible object to give maximum flexibility to the teacher who's creating a lesson. What we realized is we have a membership option that allows people to use those courses we've created in a learning management system, but there was a lot that could be done to make these resources available for students in a meaningful way. And so Arash has led the creation of this tool we call EdReady. And EdReady is a platform for personalized learning that is available to, Arash, you want to say a little bit about that before I share the little video about how we came to the EdReady idea?
Yeah, sure. And in some ways, it was presaged by a question that was in the chat about how do you personalize essentially playlists down to the individual level, which is absolutely possible in Hippocampus, but it's a fairly manual process, right? You would have to know what does each individual student need, and then you would need to create a playlist for each student that reflects those needs. Typically, that's more work than most instructors are willing or capable of doing on any kind of regular basis. And it requires you to have a fair bit of information about exactly what these students do and don't know. And so this is a great example of a case where we got exactly that same question from many of our members who said, we know that it is possible to recombine and remix and create these great learning experiences for each student, but frankly, we don't either really know how to do that, or we don't have time, or whatever. Is there something you can do? And so we put our heads together and said, well, we had been mulling over a personalized learning application, which has become EdReady, where by setting up ahead of time a set of expectations, what we call a study path, which you say, here's what we technically would like every student to do as much as possible in service to whatever they're trying to achieve, right? So we talk about goals and aspirations that students have. And then EdReady takes advantage of the situation to generate enough data about what students do and don't know for that given set of expectations to give each of them an individualized study path. And so that's where that came from, and that's exactly the purpose EdReady is intended to serve.
Awesome. Well, I am going to build off of what Arash said and share the shortest video I can to explain what EdReady does. So this is at edready.org, which is the public site. So if you want a refresher, you can find that here. We're going to play just a little piece of this, what EdReady is.
With EdReady, you can clearly see your options and gain the skills that make sense for you. Here's how it works. First, select a goal to tell EdReady where you want to go. Next, take a short self-assessment to find out what you may already know. Your results are presented as an EdReady score, showing what you should study and what you may be able to skip. Your EdReady score shows where you are right now. You can see how far this places you from the goal you chose, shown as a target score. With a clear idea of where you are and where you want to go, EdReady builds a study path to help you get there. Follow your study path to reveal free online resources for each topic. You choose which resources support how you learn best. When you think you've mastered a concept, check your knowledge and watch your EdReady score improve. If you put in the time and use the resources provided, you can be ready for any goal you choose. EdReady gives you what you need to know to get you where you want to go.
So that's the shortest explanation of what EdReady is that we can give. I thought I would also share just a little bit from our preview site. So we have a preview site. Arash, you want to say, are there any questions from folks while I'm logging in here?
Not that I'm seeing.
Okay, great. Okay, so so this is just a sample of a preview site that we've set up. I just wanted you to see when she says you choose which resources you want to study, what that looks like. So I already played around with the diagnostic on this. So it's already created, I took a short test and it came up with a study path. I actually passed on almost all the questions because I really wanted to review everything. And so you can see what's in a clear box. This is what I see as my study path as a student. Red means I need to study a lot. Yellow would mean I have some comprehension, but I need to do a little bit more work. And then the green box would designate that I really needed to, that I really mastered that concept, that I had that down. So this is a student by student, an ability to get a study path of where their gaps are. A lot of our members have been talking to us about how this is going to be a great tool for them this spring when they don't know which students are really ready for 8th grade algebra, right? Like everybody might have some different gaps. They had a different experience in the spring. So EdReady not only identifies where the gaps are, it gives them the opportunity to refresh in real time. So it's not an assessment tool, it is a learning tool. So students can dive a little bit deeper about their understanding by playing with a unit test if they want to hone in on where their gaps are, or they can just begin to study. And I want you to see how those resources we looked at Hippocampus and how they appear in our courses appear here. So this is really a topic homepage that shows all of the resources available for place value and names of whole numbers. So there's a presentation like we saw.
How much money would you rather make in a month? This amount or this amount? Of the two amounts, of course you'd rather make this amount.
So again, very practical in explaining why this is an important concept for me to learn. The worked examples that we offer were created by Sal Khan.
Place value of 3 in 4,356. Now whenever whenever I think about place value, and the more you do practice problems like this, it can become a little bit of second nature. But whenever I see a problem like this, I like to expand it out what 4,000 through.
So Salcon was very generously worked with us in the earliest days of these projects to create resources that went along directly with this curriculum. So this is a great way to learn the procedures. The integrated textbook looks like this in this environment, as opposed to how you saw it in Hippocampus. So it breaks it down to the very topic that the students are in. And the students have the ability to do some practice on their own. So they can really explore with encouragement. This is not a high stakes environment, and they can actually look at some worked examples and see how they're doing there before they decide to return to their study path. So now they've learned, they've studied, and now they can go back and take the little quiz for that particular unit, and then they can watch their score climb on up here as they work towards mastery of everything that the teacher has designated. So that is just it gives you a feel of what the student-facing experience is like. Arash, do you want to say any more about how EdReady works?
Yeah, and in the context of this presentation, I mean, I think we should be sure to make a distinction between what is effectively the OER, or what we call the public EdReady offering, versus what is possible as a member of NROC. So edready.org, as you see right there, that is open to the world. And everybody anywhere in the world, and we've become more and more global, especially with this pandemic, I've noticed, can go there as an individual, as a student, and use it, and there are no limitations whatsoever. There is a predefined set of choices in terms of what are the goals of the study paths, because we can't handle, you know, individuals setting that up entirely on their own. We have a lot of teachers, tutors, parents, what have you, who are recommending students to use edready.org, and they come up with protocols for how to help those students along the way. Like, what can students generate to show evidence of progress, etc. And we're happy to help out with any of the logic of how to do that. What Terry is going to speak to is that there is a substantial increase in the opportunities for customization and localization for institutional needs. For example, the needs of a particular classroom, or of all of the students matriculating to your college. Whatever the relevant construct is, if you become a member, then we basically give you, right, we authorize you to not only customize the EdReady platform for your particular needs, but to get access to all the data. And that's something we cannot do without, you know, addressing federal privacy laws, which is a huge part of why we have this membership construct, so that we can give you the authority to essentially manage this in a way that makes sense for you.
So yeah, Arash, I think you've pretty much covered it, that the things that can be modified. So what we've seen in our member community, we've seen folks, you know, create a module, a goal just for arithmetic, or a goal just for geometry review in conjunction with the career path a student might have. So there's all, you know, your imagination is the limit when it comes to adaptations as a member. And one of the most powerful things as a member is having access to these reports. So like Arash said, when a student is working, I'll go back to the app, when a student is working in like this preview environment, you'll see that they can take a screenshot of what they're working on and share that with their teacher in an email. They can show their what they've mastered and what they haven't. They can do all of that with their parents or their tutors. But within the environment itself, we capture all of the data about the student work. So what you see on the left here is an example of a cohort. So a full classroom, if you had an incoming group of freshmen who were going to be taking algebra for the first time, and you really wanted to know if you could group them together to do review on different concepts, this would be a great way of seeing, you know, which concepts are your students really struggling with, who exactly is struggling with what concept, who is studying versus just testing themselves, and how much time are they logged into the system, what hours are they logged in. As folks have been moved to a remote learning environment, we hear a lot of people talking about accountability for students, being able to share study skills with them, and time management skills. So you can tell quite a lot about a student's study habits from the way they work in this tool, and that deep level data is available here. So this session is not about membership. We just want you to be aware that the tool can be adapted for more, but it's really powerful as a standalone robust learning platform. I actually don't know of any free platform that is as robust as EdReady is for math and English review that's available out there. So I encourage you to go to edready.org and check that out. And I am interested in how you think it might be useful with your particular students.
Yeah, and while you're answering that question, I think something that's especially important, and I think everyone's struggling with this sudden shift to online learning everywhere, is this issue of how do you sort of make the experience more than simply presenting a lot of information online and then kind of hoping for the best. and I think whether we're talking online or face-to-face teaching, we have many decades of evidence that the more you can engage students in basically taking some responsibility, right, for their own learning, the more successful you're going to be. Somehow you have to get them to be on board with the idea that this is good for them, right, and that this is something that they should want to master. And that's always going to be a bit challenging, especially with some of these core subjects. But it's certainly very challenging if the tools you're using don't reinforce that. So if you're fighting, all of your sort of online tools and such to sort of try to get the right message across and they're all conveying the wrong message, then you really have a problem. And so we certainly, by design, tried to make it so that whether it's Hippocampus or EdReady or what have you, the idea is that the learning is always there. This is really about the opportunity to improve. Yes, there's testing. Yes, there's data and whatnot, but that's really designed mostly to help facilitate how you proceed, right? What are the conversations you're having with the student about what they're struggling with, what they're not struggling with, et cetera, and to try to keep things there so that you're getting the right mindset in play. Anyway, it's one of the big challenges we have, and we certainly see that as a key part of why we built things the way we do and the kind of the recommended practices that we try to put in front of people.
Yeah, and I think in this time, so many parents too that are working with their learners at home are unclear about whether they're really able to assist the student with their math review if they haven't done math in years. That they can monitor their students' time on the device and working with these resources and encouraging them to study as well. So for homework assignments or we have a lot of folks using these before high stakes exams. One of the interesting things coming out of these times is I think there are fewer and fewer schools that are requiring high stakes exams this year. And so this low stakes approach could be pretty powerful. So thank you guys for playing along and adding to our little flow chart here. These will be captured in the archive, so you'll be able to see what some of your colleagues have said. So that is really the look at what we have at NROC for free. As I mentioned, we work with all of these audiences, all educators, and traditionally the way we've seen people use these resources are here on the right. So they're in different kinds of classroom settings. Many of these settings are appropriate for these times. Flipped classrooms, if you're what you're assigning students to do at home on their own versus working on in class. EdReady has been used as a tool to both review and accelerate. So some students are really ahead, and this is an opportunity to beef up before they take that AP course or before they do their dual enrollment with a college at hand. So there are, the support for transitions is really what EdReady has been, I think, phenomenal at, is helping students prepare for that transition to college or grade to grade transitions. And really meeting them where they are. It's really difficult for a teacher to do that. We've heard from a lot of our members who work with special ed students or with multi-tiered support systems that see these kinds of tools as directly in support of those kinds of initiatives, which are no longer just being used with a few students, but rather with the mainstream population. It's just been too time consuming to do that as an individual teacher, to try and, based on a high stakes assessment, come up with the resources to meet every learner where they are. As Arach mentioned with Hippocampus, You can find resources there, but it's going to take a little bit more time than working with a tool that has a diagnostic built in like EdReady does. So that's a pretty powerful option. So as you've listened to Hippocampus and EdReady just being a couple of examples of the free resources are available, I wondered if this has inspired you to look for any more OER, and how free tools, whether they're applications or content, how that might lead to a more engaging learning experience. So if you have any thoughts about that, I'd love to hear it or talk about it. I wish we could turn on audio for everyone. Angie, have you seen anything in the chat that you'd like to share?
Yeah, sure. You know, a lot of interest too in the ABE. I think if we could show the adult basic education playlist that Kentucky Skills U has created, if we could maybe go to the network site and check that out, there's interest there. And then for our members too, you know, we were talking about gateway courses and different job skills, etc. And for our members, we've created 152 different career pathways in math that you can have access to as well. So those were some of the questions. And notice there on the left, you know, it's certain, those are math snacks for middle school kids. And, you know, talk about engaging. They love games. And so those are really fun and engaging that you're seeing on the left side of the screen there.
It's interesting because we do work with so many different audiences, and our members do contribute. So thank you for mentioning the adult educators that we have on the line. So we actually we have a site now for adult educators using Hippocampus. They created, our friends in Kentucky Adult Ed created a whole set of math playlists in Hippocampus that were based on the new Table 11-12 and the high impact indicators of the GED. So you can actually go straight to Hippocampus playlists related to those units, and that's right there at the public Hippocampus site on the right side below the fold. And these exist just for math. So here's an example of, so this is one, you can see how the correlation to the TABE standard is there. And that would be something, again, this would be a URL, we're slowing down here, a URL that you'd be able to share with in your lesson plan. So here's a specific playlist created for adult educators based on TABE Math 11-12, and you can grab this link and post it into another activity you're using. Other thoughts? Anybody sharing? Anybody playing with me on this question? Doesn't look like it. Well, we would love to, I know there may be some members on the call, and a lot of times folks don't know that they're members. Are there any other questions? This is just a place that says no questions from the audience. That means that none of you have posted questions. But what else would you need if you wanted to get started using these resources with your students? What questions do you have? What resources can we share? If you type your questions in menti.com or in the Zoom app, Angie will pitch them our way.
Maybe while people are thinking about questions, I'll just put a plug as they're gathering their thoughts that we're going to be doing a couple other sessions the next couple days. This afternoon, one on equitable staffing during the 2021 teacher shortage. It turns out there's a whole bunch of districts, they can't fill their sub positions. So this organization works with those folks, mostly more of an administrator type of thing. And then tomorrow we've got a session with our partners from SHIP, Dr. Dora Renaud, and she's going to have 3 students on equity and engineering programs, priming the STEM pipeline during and after COVID. So obviously, we don't get more people in the basic math level, we're not going to get people into these engineering programs. And COVID has really disrupted our diverse talent pipeline because the people who are in the least resourced areas don't have the connections, and they don't have the parents helping them with their homework, and a lot of them don't even have broadband, and they're sharing, you know, a 1-bedroom with like 4 and 5 siblings, you know, with parents. So We just have to be really realistic about the need for these kinds of tools right now with students who are really, really on the margin because of the multiple pandemics.
And to help them get control of their learning again, to take control of what, if they want to be an engineer, to have someone in their life that says, here's a tool, I don't have to know how to teach you that, but I can point you to some resources that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Angie, are there any questions?
Yeah, there are. So Terry, if you could go back to Hippocampus for us and kind of show how you can filter the content
Okay.
by level, specifically for kind of the higher ed content.
All right, so let's go here. So for some reason, my internet connection is slowing down. So let's say we'll just take, so the filtering the content, it's basically keyword related. So you would choose to search across all of these content areas. And let's say we're doing factoring. So I type in the word and it automatically pulls up all of the resources related to factoring. And so one of the ways I like the playlist feature is not so much as a student-facing tool, but as a way for me as an instructor to pull stuff over that I might want to use in lessons. So that's one way of filtering it. We do have standards correlations turned on. So those are, you can choose state standards, Common Core standards in K-12, college and career readiness standards for adult ed. You can choose standards state by state and review. This is available in math only, and review the content that is tied to those. So you can filter that way as well. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think so.
I think part of what Brianna might be getting at is, how much material is there that's truly college level? There's certainly plenty of college level material, but the intent is really around preparation for success in college level courses. And so you're not going to get, advanced calculus, like senior year level type material for college students. It's going to be, it runs right up, and you can see there is calculus and advanced math as a section of what's available on Hippocampus, but the intent is really to provide the foundation as much as possible. And so it only goes as far up into actual college level material as is needed to kind of help provide that foundation.
Thanks, Josh. Other questions, Ange?
Yeah. So if you could go, please, to the NROC network site. There was a question as far as training, and we have done this week a whole back to school series. So the training is right here on this side. And then for members, you have access to our amazing support team. But for those who are looking at the free resources and want to know more about how people are engaging students with the resources, the professional development is wonderful because you can get into nrocnetwork.org. You don't have to be logged in to go to the professional development and then use the drop-down webinars. And so all of this is right here.
Great. Excellent. Other questions? I'm going to, yeah, and so again, the URLs that you'll want to remember, you can get everywhere from nroc.org. So let's show you. So our primary site is nroc.org. If you want to get to the area that Angie was referring to, you can, up here at the top where it says NROC Network, that will bring you to our member support resources. Many of those are open for everyone to access. It's even people who have shared like worksheets to accompany EdReady, you'll find things like that there. And then you can look tool by tool for additional resources and access to the demo sites that we've shared, and some of the short videos, some case studies about how people have made use of the resources. So there's a lot at nroc.org as well. Anything else folks want to hear about?
No questions, but we've got 10 minutes left, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to show something that helps kind of engage and just something for fun, okay? Because I think in these times we need fun, we need some laughs. So, okay, I'm going to show you how to literally like roll out of bed and get on a Zoom call. And this is the Snap camera. Has anybody used the Snap camera? Okay, that is.
Oh yeah, we do it with our granddaughter. It's so fun. Yeah.
It's so fun. So what I did to engage, you know, a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old, that was very hard trying to figure out how to engage a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old. So I put myself as a scuba diver. I like stand in the Jacques Cousteau book, and we went through it. And then what I did to be silly but fun and kind of engage them is I am a scuba diver. So then I had different props. And in the book, you know, as it would show pictures, we would talk about the pictures or the animals and, you know, just do some fun stuff.
Angie, that is so extremely cool. And I want to show you guys what I do for entertainment, which is just mess around with your backdrops. Like, let's go to Bilbao, Spain, you know, during Pride.
I want to go there, yeah.
You know, here's another one where we go, okay, this is from Iceland last year. And then here is, we're going to be celebrating, this is my little granddaughter. But I don't know if you guys know that next Tuesday is the 100-year anniversary of the women's right to vote. And my mother would be like 100 on Monday. So this is why my whole life I've known this. So anyway, these are some cool things you can do too to mix stuff up. You know, oh my gosh, look at your hair.
I swear I've seen people on news using that app for real, like to pretend.
Oh, we need that. We need that.
This
so
is called my twin. Is what. But see, I had like 20 years. It took off about seconds. It freaks.
I love it.
Carol, I noticed you also put in the chat a thing about your coaching, which I was really excited that your Lifebound group is doing with these one-day training things. Did you want to say more about that? I think that is so cool.
Okay, I will. This is my Nelson Mandela quote, which is the most powerful weapon is to sit down and talk. Yes, so the Lifebound folks are Global Minded's training partner. And Sarah Kravitz, who's a coach at Rutgers University, she's a freshman year experience teacher. And I met her because we co-authored the Keys to Success series, but she led a session yesterday with a whole bunch of faculty. And Dr. Rebecca Cantor from CU Denver requested last month that we do these sessions because she said, you know, none of our advisors, none of our faculty are used to all these crisis management situations, and they can't help their returning students this year if they're not equipped with even just some basics. So we put together the session in just a one day, and it was really powerful, and she ran it yesterday, and she'll do another one next Tuesday. So you can just go to lifebound.com website and check out the particulars of that. And that is, you know, a fee-based session, and then there's some more extensive sessions that they do trainings in October and November. So, and then I will also just say for Global Minded, you know, for those of you who want to help your staff with diversity and inclusion, and we have so many great panels that are on diverse topics led by diverse people. So if you don't have a lot of diversity in your faculty, your K-12 system, whatever, these are really great resources that you can use for professional development, but also your students can write papers around, like one of our topics was everybody's not at the table, and how do you get more STEM, you know, people of color into the STEM fields, and everybody was a STEM expert, African-American doctors and engineers. And so for students to see themselves in those people, it's very, very powerful when they don't always provide that, or we don't have it built in always for all the reasons being revealed, especially this summer. And we believe we can really, you know, do something about that with partners like NROC. So yeah, just little.
Well, thank you, everyone. And thanks, Carol, for having us. And we hope this will be a reason for you to check out more OER, but definitely check out NROC.org and Hippocampus and EdReady. The note about corrections, those open textbooks we have available are also available in some printable formats for those of you who don't have access in correction. So continue the conversation. Let's think of this as just the beginning.
Well, you guys are doing great work, and we love working with you all, and we hope we're all vaccinated next June or July, and that we're seeing everybody in person. And until then, we'll just, like Angie says, we'll be super creative with our hair, with our backdrops. Well, you know, as much as we're anchored to these chairs of all of us who run around so much, we'll just keep figuring out ways to entertain ourselves and those we're working with. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Lisa. Great to see you all.
Oh, good to
Take
see you.
care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.